Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to the channel. MMA judging has always been a polarizing topic within the MMA community. It seems like every single weekend, the MMA community is at each other's throats, arguing about who won a fight and whether or not they agree with the judging. And after the most recent controversial decision between Holly Holm and Ketlen Veirira, there's been a lot of talk about what can be done to improve MMA judging. There's been a lot of talk about the MMA criteria, and there's been talk about potentially implementing open scoring within MMA. So I wanted to make a video talking about these things. I have a couple ideas I'm going to share towards the end of the video of what I personally think could improve MMA judging, but I want to talk about particularly open scoring because there's been a lot of talk about that. Literally since I've been a fan, I've been watching for about 12, 13 years. There's been some people calling for open scoring, saying that will solve the problem of bad MMA judging. And I don't know if it necessarily will, so we're going to talk about some pros and cons in a minute. But one thing I want to talk about, and I posted a community post earlier today on the channel, is there is people, whether it be MMA media personalities, just MMA YouTube accounts that have large followings, insisting that only the person they think won could have possibly won. The MMA criteria, and I know these people who insist that they're right, like, oh, I read the criteria, I understand the criteria. The criteria is very subjective. And I believe, particularly about the Holly Holm Ketlen Veirira situation, I'm not even going to get into who I thought won that fight because I haven't had a chance to rewatch it yet. But I truly believe anybody that's insisting one fighter or the other won, I just think has a little bit of a God complex of some sort. And I've seen a lot of people talking down on Twitter saying, I understand the criteria because I've read it 29 times and I know best about MMA judging. It is particularly subjective regardless. That's why we have multiple judges. That's why we have split decisions, because regardless of your interpretation of the criteria, those three judges could have different interpretations of the criteria. And I'm so sick and tired of people saying, well, this person scored it for this fighter, so that must be right. Half the time, I honestly believe it could have gone either way. I may have thought one fighter won, but I'm like, well, I don't really have a problem it going to the other fighter. But there's people out there insisting because they've read the criteria multiple times, they have a greater understanding and they know best and they are the gospel when it comes to judging fights. And I really don't like that. So let me know in the comments what you guys think about the MMA criteria and who did you think won between Holly Holm and Ketlen Veirira. I'm genuinely curious. So there's been a lot of talk about implementing open scoring within MMA. And for those of you who don't know what open scoring it is it's round by round they've released their scores. So at the end of round one, you would know who won round one, whether it be Holly Holm, Ketlen Veirira, or whatever other fight you could possibly imagine. There's been so many controversial fights over the years. Jones-Reyes, Jones-Gus won, just off the top of my head. There's been so many controversial decisions. But open scoring, the fighters would know who was winning as the fight went on, and the fans would know who was winning as the fight went on. So that's basically what open scoring is. Now you look at the cons of open scoring, and there's quite a few cons that I could come up with. If a fighter, and this happens even without open scoring, if a fighter believes they're up already, there's a potential that they stall and avoid a fight. Now, if they know for sure because of open scoring they're up, they're almost definitely going to stall. I think it will happen more often. Imagine there's a fighter who's a point fighter who's up 4-0 after 4 close rounds that could have went either way, and they know for sure because of open scoring they are up in the fight. They're going to avoid the fight in the 5th round, and they're going to stall. And I know that happens all the time now, kind of, because of fighter, but in close fights, this takes away the incentive to try to win those final rounds or look for a finish in the final rounds, because now, because of the open scoring, you already know you're winning the fight as long as you don't get finished. So I think it increases the probability of fighters stalling in a fight. The other issue I have with open scoring is, for us fans, this is a selfish reason, there would be no suspense. Imagine you're watching a fight and it's a very close fight, and you're like, I don't know who won this fight. And there's that suspense when the judges' scorecards are about to be read. You're like, I don't know who's going to get this. This was very close. It completely takes that away. Imagine a fight like Ketlen Veirira versus Brandon Moreno 3, a very close fight. Wasn't sure who it was going to on the scorecards. and you know in the fifth round you already know who won the fight. It takes a lot away from it in the excitement factor. And also with open scoring, I believe this doesn't fix poor judging. Regardless, those scorecards are coming from the same judges. So if the judges themselves are incompetent in their interpretations of the rules or of the judging criteria, then open scoring doesn't fix that. You know, you could still have a bad judge. They're just scoring it round by round and you're knowing the results live in real time rather than after the fight. So it doesn't really fix bad judging in general. Now, as far as pros for open scoring, I racked my brain. I asked people on the members only Discord. I asked people on Twitter, what are the pros of open scoring? And there's a lot of people who are proponents of implementing open scoring. The only pro that I could find is that if a fighter knows they're down, that they can try to go for a finish. They can have a more sense of urgency within a fight. But I also think that works the opposite way as well. If a fighter knows they're down and they don't have the heart to continue, they're just like, okay, well, I'm just not going to fight. I'm going to live to fight another day. I'm not going to risk getting finished because I've already lost 3-4 rounds. And, you know, I really don't want to fight anymore because I've already lost the fight. Now, it might increase the urgency on one end. You know, it's possible. It depends on the fighter. But at the same time, I think other fighters are going to actively avoid as much risk as possible once they know they have 3 rounds in the bag in a 5-round fight or 2 rounds in the bag in a 3-round fight. I think it's going to cause more boring 3rd rounds, 4th rounds, 5th rounds because of open scoring. But, you know, I guess the fighters would know where they stand. I just think this is a sport where there's more cons from open scoring than there is pros. But if you know any pros of open scoring outside of the losing fighter knowing they were down, let me know in the comments. I'm genuinely curious. So as far as my ideas for how do you improve MMA judging, there's one thing that I've been talking about forever, and we need judging accountability. When we have some of these scorecards that are just completely outlandish, and there's been quite a few. One I mentioned recently on a stream, and some of you guys might not even been around as a fan of MMA at this point, Diego Sanchez versus Ross Pearson. That is the definition of a robbery. Diego Sanchez did not win a single round in that fight, and somehow he got the decision. You know, some of these other fights are closer, but I want explanations from these judges. I'm not asking them to go and be interviewed by the media. I would just like them to submit an explanation of how they scored the fight, how they got to that score of the fight. Because if there is accountability, then potentially there could be consequences for egregiously bad cards. The other solution that I have that I think would fix it, I think the more judges, the better. And I had an idea. I think we should do 5 judges, and I think we have 3 cage side, and then I would like to have 2 maybe in the back at the arena watching on TV, no commentary, and watching from the camera angles on the UFC's broadcast. Because I honestly believe, you know, I don't know exactly where these judges are sitting. I know they're sitting very close cage side, but depending on where the fighters are in the cage, they could get bad angles. And I think the more judges we have, I think the better the judging would be if you can get half decent judges in there. Obviously, they need to be educated on the judging criteria. They need to take classes, all that good stuff. But if we have more judges, there's less of a chance we get, you know, if we get 2 bad scorecards, there's still a chance that the right fighter wins the fight, because there has been some cases. You know, I know robbery gets thrown around quite a bit nowadays, but there has been some cases of actual robberies in fights, you know, where one fighter clearly won. It's really not up for debate, but somehow 2 judges or sometimes even 3 judges gave it to the losing fighter. And I don't think that should happen. And I truly believe that if we have more judges and we have 2 judges in the back watching on a monitor, I would even like to see the UFC, or even in general the athletic commissions, because they're the ones that have to implement this, even just test it out. Just have those judges in the back scoring the fight. They don't actually matter in the grand scheme of things, but just see how those scorecards match up to the ones sitting ringside. I think that would be very, very interesting as an experiment. Even then if it seems like it's working out good, then maybe implement it. And that's the other thing I want to talk about in this video. A lot of people are saying the UFC should do this, the UFC should do that. Yes, the UFC can campaign for some of these things, But it all comes down to the athletic commission. The UFC doesn't hire these referees. The UFC does not hire these judges unless they're out of the country or somewhere without an athletic commission. It is the state that supplies the judges. It's the state that hires the referees, because otherwise it'd be a conflict of interest. There's a lot of fans that don't understand the UFC doesn't have anything to do with the judges and referees outside of when they're in a space that doesn't have an athletic commission and they go to other commissions and hire these judges and hire these refs. Because the UFC itself can't say, okay, we're going to go to open scoring. They can campaign for it. They can try to get it with these athletic commissions. But at the end of the day, the athletic commissions are the ones making the decisions. And, it sucks because these athletic commissions are never really held accountable when there's bad stoppages, early stoppages, late stoppages, bad scorecards. There's literally no accountability. I mean, look at the athletic commission. Some of you guys might not remember this, but a lot of you probably do. Nick Diaz got banned for life for competing in MMA for testing positive for marijuana. That just goes to show you how clueless some of these athletic commissions are. And that was the Las Vegas Athletic Commission, which is considered the best in the United States. So there's a lot of problems going on here. I've offered some solutions. Let me know what you think in the comments about these solutions. Do you want open scoring? Yes or no? Let me know in the comments as well. Don't forget to like the video, and thank you so much for watching.